I want to apologize first. I have never taught this class before. So you are the guinea pigs, and this could go terribly wrong. I'm starting from a little bit of a deficiency because my first appointment this morning, the lady told me I didn't look good, that she was wondering if I wasn't feeling well. So I'm going to try and build my confidence back up and make it through this with you guys, but please don't rip on me. Be nice on the reviews. So we decided to do this class because of all the interactions I've had with you guys. And you're always nice and diligent. You bring a package with all these comps, and then I take them and I act the same, like I'm super interested in what you have for me. And then I sit in my car at 108 degrees. I'm like, these comps are terrible. Okay, so I want to help you understand how I run comps because I think it'll make you a little more effective in your interactions with your appraiser, which means you'll be doing a better job for your client. So that's how this all started. But again, this is a working process. So you all have a sample appraisal, I hope, I think. We just put the sales comparison grid, but pull that out for a second. Because I think before we kind of dive into the comps, I want to make sure we understand the gist of how to read these appraisals. You guys all have that? It could be our first fail if you don't all know that, but hopefully you do. So what we're looking at now is the 1004 appraisal report form. It's the form you will see most often when you're in a transaction. This is changing. Everything in my industry is changing, and they're moving towards a universal form. Right now, a condo's on a different form, manufactured homes on a different form, 2 to 4 families are on a different form, and they're working towards one form that all transactional appraisals will be on. But one of the things I was hoping you would get from this class is I would like you to be able to go over an appraisal with your client, okay? And I won't spend a lot of time on it. We have a 3-hour class where we talk about this a lot. But I do want to go over some of the abbreviations here and explain to you how adjustments are derived, because I think that'll help you as you're trying to find comps, okay? So do you see location? Do you see that line?
Yes.
A backs traffic, that is a coded field, so I want to make sure you understand what that means. That A stands for adverse, okay? That field on this form is going to start with an A, a B, or an N. If there's something great about the location, it's in a guard-gated community, that'll probably start with a B, meaning it's beneficial, meaning the typical buyer would prefer that location over others. Make sense? Neutral is just a typical neighborhood. Adverse is there's something about the location that's a negative. In this case, that it backs traffic. Okay, so that's a coded field. And again, I want you to be able to go over these with your client. I'm not going to go over the obvious ones, but down to view. View is the same format as location. N stands for neutral, and so what the appraiser is saying here, it's a neutral location in just a general just a general residential view. If it were on the golf course, it would say B, golf, or semicolon golf. If it backed high tension power lines, it would say A for adverse. Can we agree that backing high tension power lines is adverse? And then power lines. So it is A, B, or N, and then a description of what's good or bad or indifferent about the location. And any questions, you stop and ask. Design is also a coded field. DT1 stands for detached 1-story. If it were a 2-story, it would say DT2. If it were attached, it would say AT. Okay? So it is detached or attached, how many stories, and then the architectural design. This is just a standard tract home tile stucco. Quality construction and condition are coded in the same way. Quality goes from Q1 to Q6. Q1 is the best, Q6 is the worst. Fannie Mae, I do not believe loans on Q5 or Q6, so those are like homes that are falling apart. Q1 would be, multi-million-dollar luxury home, something you see in Silverleaf or Paradise Valley. Most houses are going to be Q3 or Q4. Okay, 20-year-old tract homes probably Q4. It's a little subjective. Like if I'm appraising a 5-year-old Toll Brothers, I might call that a Q2. If I'm appraising a 5-year-old Shea home, I might call that Q3. Okay, but just important to know Q1 to Q6. Most will fall in the Q3 to Q4 category. Condition, there's some nuances here.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
So when you make that that subjective decision within a geographic area,
Yeah.
without mountain range, okay, you got a whole range. But let's say you're out in Surprise and it's within a mile. They're all similar builds. Okay, are you going to make that differentiation within that geographic area, or is it?
No, it's anywhere. It's anywhere. If I put a Silverleaf house in Surprise, I would still call it Q1. I would probably have a lot of other problems with that.
Right.
But the quality is quality no matter what it is. Yeah.
So within, like, let's say a condo complex, and they're comparing it to other condos, and one's been completely gutted, redone, you know, nice, really nice.
Yep.
Do you,
So,
I mean, because
so
I had one that came back really low, but he compared it to ones that were not redone at all, and they both came in at Q3.
So it's a really good question. So most condos are going to be Q4, most condos, and so the appraiser in your scenario where your house is top notch, everything is totally remodeled, appraiser could handle it one of two ways. They could call it Q3 and the rest Q4 and make an adjustment for it, or they can create another line down here, upgrades, and make an adjustment there.
Okay.
But you should get credit for it one way or the other.
Okay.
So really good
Thank
questions. Okay, so nuances on the condition. C1 is reserved for new construction only. The second somebody moves into that house, it becomes a C2. Okay? So C1, and then I want to talk for a second about C5 and C6. I typically can't do anything if something's a Q5 or Q6, if the house is falling apart, like that's major structural stuff. But if I'm at a house that's a C5 or C6, meaning it's in bad shape, right? Like flooring's removed, cabinets might be removed, roof might be leaking, where I would call that a C5, I as an appraiser have the ability to go back to the lender and say, hey, I could call this a C5, which means you're not going to be able to get a loan on this, or at least a conforming loan.
Yeah.
Or I could call it a C4 and tell you here are the things you need to do to bring it up to a C4. Okay? So I would rather, instead of me giving you an appraisal that's not going to do you any good, I would rather give you an appraisal where there is a path to get your loan out there. So it is really rare that you'll ever see C5 or C6 for the subject location. Typically what it would be is C4, and then down at the bottom we would check subject to the following repairs, and would say once you do these repairs, this is a C4 and the value is after those repairs. Does that make sense? Again, we do as-is appraisals all the time, but typically when it's for lending purposes, we want to appraise it as though it's in lendable condition. Okay, so if you've ever gotten conditions on your appraisal, it's probably either because adverse health and safety issues, or the condition is just not up to loan standards, and so they're requiring things to be done. Does that all make sense?
If
Okay.
flooring is not in a property, so like an FHA loan, and they have taken all the flooring out of this concrete, is that a adverse?
I would call it C4 subject to you installing.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, I can do it as is, but if FHA and the lender won't take it,
Okay.
we'll give you the path to get it done. Yeah,
If it's polished concrete finished.
that's okay. Is it a finished floor? And if it's a sealed, treated concrete, we can call it a finished floor. So that's okay. Some of the nicest houses I've appraised have polished concrete floors.
Right.
So yeah, we're good on that. All right, good. I like this room, by the way. You're giving me confidence back. I'm telling you, I started a really.
And you look good today.
Oh, I really. Very healthy. This is good. Very healthy. Okay, let's go to bathroom. That's a coded field 2. 2.1 means 2 full baths, 1 half bath. When I first started appraising, we would designate things as 3/4 baths if they have a shower and not a tub. We don't do that anymore, which is good because I have trouble adding fractions, and if you have 2 3/4 baths, I'm not positive what that means. So I'm really glad I can call it 2.1. So it's 2 full baths, 1 half bath. The house I was at this morning in Paradise Valley had 4 full bathrooms and 2 half bathrooms, so that's 4.2. Okay?
So a bathroom that has just a shower but no tub is a full bath.
We'll call it a full bath. Yeah, which I'm glad about. I hope I have time to do this. Before I call something a bedroom, what does it need?
Closet.
I hear closet.
Window.
I hear window.
Smoke
Closet.
egress and egress.
You've been here before. Okay.
Best use.
All right. So this is a trick question. There's no such thing as a clear answer to what a bedroom is. You can go. I was an expert witness in the trial, and the entire trial was, is this a bedroom or is it not a bedroom? And I did so much research, and there's not a precise, everyone agrees definition. The first answer I always get is closet. If you call Arizona Regional MLS today and say, does it need a closet to call it a bedroom, I believe they'll tell you no. But if you call the Tucson MLS, they'll tell you yes. It's not consistent at all. So all I can do is tell you what it needs for me to call it a bedroom. Highest and best use has to be as a bedroom. Generally speaking, I want a closet or built-in furniture that can be used to store clothes. And I'm not talking you roll something in. It has to be affixed to the wall. Okay, does that make sense? Second, it has to be large enough to be functional as a bedroom. And I guess my definition, without giving you dimensions, is if you put a twin bed in the middle, could you walk around on 3 sides? To me, that's how you have to have that for functionality. I heard window. It's really 2 forms of ingress and egress. So typically it's a door and a window. We have a room in our house called the Xbox room, and that has 2 doors, no windows, that's okay. So as long as you have 2 forms of ingress and egress, you're okay. And the last thing, I think, Carl, you mentioned, functional access to take a shower or bathroom, okay? And that is subjective, but I'll give you some examples of that. Let's say you have a 2-story home, and on the first floor you have a living room, dining room, kitchen, room with a door, window, and a closet next to a half bathroom, and then 3 bedrooms, 2 baths upstairs. I wouldn't call that a bedroom downstairs because you have to go upstairs to take a shower. Make sense?
Yeah.
Luxury home, owner's suite, bedroom and bathroom on this side. On the other side, 3 bedrooms, 3 ensuite bathrooms. Is that what you call them? Where they have their own access to the bathroom, and then you have another room, door, window, and a closet next to a half bathroom. I wouldn't call that a bedroom because you have to walk through somebody else's bedroom to take a shower or bathroom. So that's what I mean by functional access, okay? Those are my definitions. There are some exceptions. I appraised a brand new house in New River, and they just finished it, and it had 3 rooms with no closets. And so I had the choice as an appraiser to call that a 0-bedroom house. Good luck getting a loan on a 0-bedroom house. Or in that case, I called it 3 bedrooms even though there were no closets. And in the functional utility line, I said, there's an adjustment for there not being closets, okay? That's better for me to say that than to call it a 0-bedroom house and have the lender say we can't loan it, okay? So there's some exceptions to what I'm telling you, but that's kind of the gist of it. Basement line, if there was a basement, this section would tell you finished square footage, unfinished square footage, is it a walk out, a walk up, or interior only access, bedrooms, bathrooms, and other room counts. It'll be there. Garage, 3GA stands for 3-car garage attached. 3DW is the number of driveway spaces, okay? If it's a tandem garage, let's say it's 2 wide with 1 deep, that would probably be 3GA because there's 3 garage spaces, but then 2 DW because the width is less. And we give, the good appraisers give less value to tandem base. Yeah?
Question on the basement and a guest house, detached. How do you weight the square footage?
Yeah, so that's hard. So the short answer is we adjust it separately. Okay, so this is, if you look at this line, it says above grade, right? So they're wanting to know very specifically what is above the lot line. So we'll adjust that here. We adjust basements here, and then we would adjust a guest house separately. Typically, we adjust basements and guest house at least at a little bit lower price per square foot figure. And the reason is, I know there are some of you that might love basements, okay? You grew up in the Midwest, you all have basements, right? Maybe you got bar mitzvah in your basement. I don't know, but you love your basement, and I know that person exists because they're in almost every class I have. But then there are also people that hate basements. You love your basement, right? Right. But there are also people that hate basements. They don't want a basement. Did you guys see Pulp Fiction? Like weird stuff can happen in the basement, right? So I don't care about either of those people, but when I'm focusing on the typical buyer, which is really what this is all about, the typical buyer says, I like a basement, but I like it less. I'll use a basement, but I'll use it less. I like a guest house, but I'll use it less, and so we should adjust it at a lower price per square foot basis. And so on this appraisal, if this is an old appraisal, but if the appraiser was adjusting above grade square footage at $50 a foot, again, this is a really old appraisal, we would adjust the basement and guest house at least a little bit lower number, okay? Yeah?
Okay, I have an appraisal coming up on one, and I'm representing a buyer, and I think I think the listing agent included this workroom that's attached to the garage. It does have a wall unit in it. It is bare concrete floors. I can't figure out, because I looked at another one in there, it's the same, it's a different square footage, but I can't, so I think they included that.
Yeah.
By 150 square feet of a workroom.
I would not include that in the square footage.
You would not, okay,
No.
so it would be like as like a shed or something like that.
Maybe it would have value at another line in the grid, or maybe they wouldn't give it any value,
Okay,
but it,
okay.
it should not be included in the square
Okay, I
footage.
need to check with the listing.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the mother-in-law suite is in line with the house
But
and
it's
the
got a
heated
separate entrance?
separate engines and heated and cooled garage is same roof, how do you
So-
deal with that?
The garage, I've appraised a bunch of houses that have air-conditioned garages. It doesn't meet the other criteria. It's, the highest and best use isn't as living area, so typically that wouldn't be included. Garages don't have finished flooring usually, so we wouldn't include that. So air conditioning a garage does not instantly add 400 feet to the square footage of the house. On attached, so detached guest houses are easy. They'll always be adjusted separately, like we talked about, and they'll be a little bit lower rate. Attached guest houses, ANSI, which I don't have time to go into, it's the new measuring standards for Fannie Mae, it's kind of a big deal. ANSI says if you can't get to that area from the existing main house, from other air-conditioned space, then you can't include that in the square footage. So I think what you should assume is on an appraisal, if you have a guest quarters that's attached with a separate entrance only, assume the appraiser is not going to include it in the square footage. Which doesn't mean we're not giving you value, we're just giving you value in a different space. Okay? Yeah.
We were running comps in, I think it's Sun City West. You know, they have a lot of the mother-in-law suites that guests, they're attached, but they're the casitas. And I mean, it was clear as day that half the agents include the full square footage, half the agents didn't on closed listings. So when it comes to an appraiser looking at comps, I mean, are they going to depth of like?
We're supposed to be. It gets really tough
Yeah.
because there's so much inconsistency in your profession and in my profession, by the way. But yeah, we're supposed to be able to figure it out. And the first way we do it is if it's detached, the county typically isn't including it in the square footage. So the county says it's 1,600 square feet and you're marketing it 1,850 square feet. The odds are to us that that 250 square feet is the detached guest house.
Okay.
But it's tough, and we're making calls to agents to try and figure that out. It's our job
There's
to try
not
and
like
get it
any
right.
regulations, so it's, you know.
But yeah, go ahead.
How are we looking at basements in terms of including them, not including them?
Not included.
Not
Yeah.
including them.
And so a general, there's no real rules in my industry. Appraisers do whatever they want. I don't know if you've noticed. But my typical adjustment for basements and guest houses is somewhere between 70 and 85% of what I'm adjusting the main house at. Okay? I have to be clear. What I'm not saying is, hey, if the neighborhood's selling at $300 a foot, I'm not saying I'm giving you 70 to 85% of $300. I'm giving you 75 to 80% of what I'm adjusting the square footage on in the grid. Do you understand that? So I wanted, a lot of people did not. There was no recognition on that. Okay, so let me back up. And I have to get to running comps here. This is, maybe this needs to be a 2-hour class. So, if we're in a neighborhood that houses are selling for, let's say, $300 a foot, you have to understand, appraisers aren't going to adjust square footage at $300 a foot. So what I mean is, subject's 3,000 square feet, comp 3 is 2,600 square feet. That's what I'm talking about, is how is this adjustment derived for us having 400 square feet more? You understand that, right? We're on the same page on that. We don't adjust this difference, 400 times 300, because when we do an appraisal and we say, hey, this neighborhood's selling at $300 a foot, we're adjusting for views and lot size and bedrooms and bathrooms and garages and pools. You following me?
Yes.
We have to peel all those layers of the onion away to finally say, okay, we're adjusting a big percentage of this $300 a square foot in other places. So when we're finally isolating on what's each additional foot worth, it's not $300. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So just to help you out with some math here, in a neighborhood where a house is selling at $300 a foot, I would expect an appraiser to be adjusting somewhere in the vicinity of 30 to 40% of that, okay? So following the math, let's say $300 a foot, the appraiser's adjusting at 40% of that. What we're saying is we're adjusting square footage at $120 a foot. Follow that?
Yeah.
So now, trying to answer the basement and guest house question, if the appraiser's adjusting this at 120, it wouldn't surprise me to see the appraiser adjusting guest houses and basements somewhere around $100. So it's not 70 to 80% of what the neighborhood's selling for. It's 70 to 80%, 85% of what we're adjusting the main house at. So again, the simplest math I can say, if it's selling at $300 a foot, multiply that by, let's say 35%. Again, there's no exacts here. And then when you're trying to figure out what your guest house and basement are worth, maybe multiply that by 80%.
If you're looking at appraisers, appraisals are an easy way to determine what adjustment figure they're using.
Well, so I put mine here. On my program, I'm allowed to disclose this or not disclose this. I disclose it. Most appraisers don't disclose it. Disclose it. What you'd have to do is say, let's look at this one where an adjustment, this minus this, divided by that, and then you can figure out what the square footage figure is. Okay? Oh, good, yeah.
This needs to be a 2-hour class. It's gonna get tricky because many of us, most of us, everyone here probably, utilizes comps to price, right, and put it on MLS.
Yes.
Right? So am I sitting here, you're telling me, I'm sitting here, you're telling me that if I have a basement and I have a guest house, I should not include those?
No. You should include it because your peers are including it. I don't. I expect you to include it,
But
even
not
though it's a little
100%.
misleading. It's a little
Right.
misleading when it's 3,000 square feet, 500 square foot basement, and you call it 3,500 square feet, and then the line below that you say 500 square foot guest house, but you all do it, or most of you do it, and if you don't do it, you're not doing the best job for your sellers.
Right,
So I'm not judging you for doing it.
I like to break it down so that they know exactly what.
Maybe in the
that
comment
total is.
section,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
want the eyeballs on it, so
Right.
call it 3,500 square feet, but maybe in the comment section say, it's a 3,000 square foot home with a 500 square foot
Yeah.
basement. All right.
Thank you.
Just one more.
Okay, and then I swear I will stay here all day to answer
If
questions.
it has, if it's above grade on one side of the house, like some of the ones in North Scottsdale where, is that then a 2-story house? Like say you walk in, it maybe is at the top of the backyard or something.
According to ANSI, if any part of a floor is below grade, you can't include that in the above grade living area.
Okay.
And so it's a more complicated answer. So now I'm gonna seem
Okay.
rude, and I don't mean to be.
Okay.
But this is, I love this dialogue, but I gotta get to comps. It would be really weird. Okay, so ideal comps. You wanna try and find comps from the last 3 months. This market has moved really fast. This has been a 3 or 2.5 year period. No, I go a year back, but I want to make sure my appraisal has some decent comps within the last 3 months. It's important, because otherwise, if all my comps are at least 4 months old, am I really giving you a current appraisal, or am I giving you an appraisal that's 4 months old? So I really want to try and find recent stuff. Within 1 mile of the subject property, we're going to talk about that next slide. Similar community, I'm going to tell you how I run comps in a minute. Similar size, I start my searches at plus or minus 20% square footage. I change that. Sometimes I'll expand, sometimes I'll contract, but I think that's a good starting spot. Similar amenities we'll get to, similar year built we'll get to. I love this slide. This is my blue penis slide. This is not my this is not a blue penis, this is Arcadia. And this is a geographical competency slide. And what I want you, so let's say here, then I start feeling weird pointing at it, but I just have to get over it. So if this is the subject property, what I want you to get out of the habit of is running a mile radius. Because that's not the right way to appraise a house in Arcadia. Understanding the nuances of the neighborhood you're appraising in, what you want to do is get on MLS and draw your boundaries. Because in this particular case, here's the subject, these comps, that comp that's way further away is a better comp than this comp, this comp, this comp, or this comp. But if you don't know the neighborhood and you're only running a mile radius, 4 of your 5 comps are going to be bad. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, go ahead.
What about so we sell Whitman, Wickenburg, Morristown, very difficult to find comps.
You get your really wide search parameters.
Really wide.
Really wide. Yeah.
And to find one that's unique,
How wide
It's
is
near
Wickenburg?
impossible unless it's like Wickenburg Ranch.
You can go, in neighborhoods like that, you can go 5 miles away for comps. I mean, you just go as far as you need to fill out your grid. That is gonna be comps class 1 and 2. Again, geographical competency, this is Central Quarter, 7th Avenue to 7th Street, Missouri up to Northern. Again, if you don't know the neighborhood and you're running a 1 mile search radius, you're gonna get these. These are bad comps. That's not Central Corridor. People pay less to be here than they do here. So it's knowing your neighborhood and drawing your boundaries and instead of doing that 1 mile radius.
We have to be confident.
You should be confident. All right, so this is where I'm going to be nervous because what we're going to try and do is do some comps together, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong. Okay, so I'm going to start with an easy one just because it's on the street where my first house I ever bought many years ago, a place called Tatum Lane. I had some good memories in there. And I'm just going to give you, this is just an easy tract home over at Tatum and Bell. Okay, you guys know where that is?
Yep.
Not terribly far from here. I just want to get you guys a picture of what we're talking about. Can you all see this? Is it coming up? Okay, so this is the house we're going to appraise first. 4618 East Angela Lane. I'm going to take some notes. Normally I have 2 or 3 screens I'm working with, and now I'm just going to...
Did you just start with the subdivision?
Well, so this is just the subject first. So I just want you to see the house we're appraising.
Okay.
So it's a 2-story home, 1,800 square feet, Tatum Lane. All right? So follow that. So now, if I'm running comps for this morning, the first thing I do, and I'm not going to do it for you, is I run Monsoon. You guys all know how to run Monsoon, right? So I'm just going to save you the trouble of having to do that. So here, let's get into it. So my first search, anytime I'm in a subdivision, is actives, pendings, closed sales, okay, within the last year. I go a year back. Doesn't mean I want to use a sale that's 11 months old, but if that's all I got in the subdivision, I'm going to use it, okay? So I'm going a year back in my subdivision, and then, bless you.
Excuse me, thank you.
All right, let's see what we got. So first search I'm printing are these comps. So you've noticed that I haven't put any other parameters in there at all, right?
When you put the subdivision name in there, you're hoping that the realtors put the right subdivision name in there?
I am.
Okay.
Look, I'm covering for you no matter what, because my next search I'm going to do based on parameters.
Okay.
But yeah, I had that happen today. Well, the appraisal I'm doing this afternoon is in FQ Story.
Yeah.
And some of you guys just put story, some of you put FQ story. So yeah, I'm going to do it the other way. So my first search that I'm going to print and take with me is this. Notice I didn't put in any other parameters, okay? If I get 90 comps, I'll put some parameters in. But for me, the subdivision's the most important thing, and I don't want to miss anything in my subdivision. So that's the first thing I'll do. Second search is I'm going to go to our map, okay? And so again, we're Tatum and Bell. So I'm going to say what I think the boundaries are, okay? And I'm going to do this whole 1 mile section, even though, yeah, that's probably about right, okay? Notice again, I'm not doing a 1 mile radius, because if I do a 1 mile radius, I'm getting Triple Crown, which is over here, which sells for more, right, Suze? Yeah, you know that. And then if I go south of Bell, guess what? I change zip codes, okay? I go to 85254, I think. Or maybe I don't, I'm sorry, wrong side of Tatum. So you do that. Okay, so square footage now, let's just start, because I want to see what I get here. Again, I could change
Why do
this.
you care about zip codes?
Huh?
Why do you care about zip codes?
Well, so if you compare 85254 to 85032, you're going to see a big difference. Phoenix versus Scottsdale zip code. So that is, it's about being geographically competent. It doesn't always matter to me. Like Arcadia, the slide we looked at earlier, that blue penis, some of it's in Scottsdale, some of it's in Phoenix, and in that case I don't care. Because I don't think the market cares in Arcadia like they do in 85254.
So a major arterial like Tatum and Bell, you're going to stay away from crossing, but a minor like Grover's, you're not going to worry so much about.
Right. So, but let me say this on that. For me, I do cross major boundaries sometimes. In this case, I won't have to. We're going to find enough comps, so I'm not going to need to do that. But every time I cross a boundary, I have to ask the questions. Did I change school districts? Did I change zip codes? Did I change cities? is the market reacting to being on the other side of that arterial. So I'll do it, but I just am cognizant that, okay, I have some questions to ask. All right, so now we'll take this out, and we get 44 properties, so I might print that, or what I might do is we're a 2-story. I put 2 to 3 stories because sometimes tri-levels show up. So now I got 15 properties, okay? That's my next search. Probably in this case, I like to have more than 15 when I go out to a property. Again, not all these are closed. 4 of those are actives, 1 of those are pending. So in this case, we're talking about, so yeah, I probably do a search without the 2 stories. So I'm gonna have some 1 stories in there because I can adjust for that. Does that make sense? If I'm a 2-story and 2 stories are selling for less than 1 stories, and I'm using a 1-story comp, I can adjust for that. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you putting these in order of importance to you,
Well,
these criteria?
yeah, I guess so. I guess, so not really on my second search. So my first search is all locational based, right? We got that. It's what's in my subdivision. My second search is, here's my area. I'm going to put some parameters that are important to me, and I'm going to decide from there if I need to do anything else. So in this particular case, because it's just an easy tract home on an interior street with nothing special about it, I probably am not going to do more searches. Other than this case, this is how I'm going to leave it with you. Is on this particular property, my favorite search is going to be the subdivision search. The first one we went through together. The second search is those 15 properties that are all 2 stories or 2 or 3 stories. I'm going to hope I have enough comps in that search that I don't need to use this one. But this one is 44 properties that include single and 2 stories. So that's my first, that's how I'd be done with this. Yeah.
So with the lack of inventory over the last almost a year at this point, right?
Right.
Well, over a year. There are some geographic areas in town. You can go back a year, you can go into subdivisions, there's no comps. At what point do you keep expanding until you get the comps in? And what do you feel is like your minimum amount of comps to have?
Great question. So I'm different than a lot of appraisers. Like if you ever see a 3 comp appraisal report, you're seeing we're being recorded, so I got to be careful, but a lazy appraiser. Like that's lazy appraising. It's really hard for me to do a good job with 3 comps. So my typical appraisal is 7 to 8 comps. And so I'll just keep expanding, and I'll say, hey, I know I used a comp over a mile away, or I used a comp in a different zip code, but this is why I did it. In this appraisal, if in those 15 2 stories I couldn't satisfy my grid and I had to use a 1 story, I would say, typically I wouldn't use a 1 story home, but here's why I had to. Because I wanted another sale from August, right? Like if in those 15 2-level homes, the most recent one is June, and now I'm in September, I don't want to give you an appraisal where my most recent sale is June. So that would be a scenario where I would use a 1-story home because I can adjust for that. You follow that? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
When you make those adjustments for that case particularly, do you have a standard adjustment for that, or is it depending on,
depends on the neighborhood,
all the other little criteria?
Yeah. This is where I disappoint you all. There is no chart. There shouldn't be a chart. Because it depends. Like the exact same pool in Maryvale is not worth the same as the exact same pool in Paris Valley. And so if any appraiser gives you a chart, I mean, they're not understanding. What every adjustment we make in the appraisal is supposed to be what a typical buyer today in this neighborhood, in this price range is willing to pay. And it's different from neighborhood to neighborhood. So I don't have a chart for you, yeah.
How much weight do you give to pending listings as comps if they're multiple offers after 5 days on market?
Great question. So most of my appraisals, almost every appraisal you see will have at least 1 listing or pending. Okay, at least 1. FHA requires 2 if the appraiser checks the box that the market is trending up or down. Pendings are better than actives. Lower price actives are more important than higher price actives. I can find overpriced listings without your help. It's the lower price listings that I worry about, right? If the comps say we're worth 600, but here's a house listed next door, it's been on the market 45 days and it hasn't sold, and it's listed at 550 and it looks the same, that's concerning because what if that might mean the market's going down, okay? On pending sales, here's where you can be really helpful to your client and to the appraiser. If you've got a pending sale that you think is a great comp, you want this comp, it supports your contract price, and you call the agent, they say, hey, it's closing in 2 days, you know what you should do? Postpone the appointment with the appraiser. Push it back 3 days, 4 days, because that comp as a pending sale is my comp 8. That comp as a closed sale might be my comp 1. And there is a big difference in terms of how relevant and important it is, because what I don't want to do is put all my weight on something that hasn't closed, because guess what happens if it doesn't close? I've overvalued the house. Okay? Make sense? All right, so pendings, I love it when you can find out what it's under contract at. I tend not to call, but if you know what it's under contract at, and you know there's no contingencies, or they tell you it's just above list price or just below, like that's really good information to give to your appraiser. All right, so should we go on to a little hard one?
concessions too?
Yeah, so here's kind of the sad thing for you all. Appraisers should be adjusting concessions because concessions impact sales prices. Is that fair to say? If you have 2 offers, one at $500,000 with a $10,000 seller concession, and one with a $491,000 offer with no concessions, what do you think your client's going to take? The $491 because they're netting $1,000 more. Fair?
Yes.
And the buyer might be more qualified because they don't need money from you to close. And if your answer is yes, then you're admitting that concessions impact sales price, which means the appraiser should adjust for them. So if you give me a comp that sold for $500,000 and is sold with $10,000 seller financial concessions, to me it's a $490,000 sale.
Wait, repeat that again, sorry.
So if you give me a sale that closed at $500,000, but I can look at the listing and see that it's sold with a $10,000 seller concession, to me that's a $490,000 sale. Because I'm going to make a minus $10,000 for the concessions, because unless you can tell me the story that in this case that didn't impact, I should adjust for it.
So if we have one, too, that we're under contract for, and there's $20,000 worth of seller concessions, so say $485, and then the actual net to the seller is $465, should the appraiser appraise that at $465 or $485?
We should appraise it for what it's worth.
Well, I understand that.
That's what we should do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I get that a lot. If the subject's under contract with $10,000 seller concessions and comp 1 sold with $10,000 concessions, does that matter to me? It doesn't matter at all. I don't care what the subject's under contract at. It's not supposed to have any impact on what I'm making an adjustment for. So it's fine that you sold with $10,000 in concessions, but that doesn't matter because I'm not adjusting the subject. I'm only adjusting the comps. And so it's the comp concessions that I care about. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about if you can find something within the subdivision, but it's months back, and then adjusting for time?
We can adjust for
appreciation?
time. Yeah.
And do appraisers do that right now?
So it's questionable. So the market's weird. The market's super weird. July was kind of a bad month. If you look at Arizona Regional MLS average sales price, July was down like 4% from June. In August, I didn't pull the final numbers, but August was trending a little bit lower than July. So you had May 2022 to December 2022 to June of 2023, and now we're kind of back like that. But what's happening in the neighborhood that I'm appraising in? And if the neighborhood I'm appraising is going like this, then I can make positive adjustments to dated
Okay,
sales.
so if it's in the subdivision, like we have a listing right now, struggle to find good comps, but the ones that were in the subdivision were how many months old? 8 months, 9 months old, right? And if we can adjust for time, given that zip code, given that city, which has actually been positive, not a lot, but like almost 4%.
We can make a positive adjustment.
So we did, and we got pushback from a lot of agents. It's like, well, you can't adjust for time.
You totally can.
Right?
So if you look at the sales grid, we're adjusting, we have to adjust for 2 things. We have to adjust for physical differences, condition, views, all that stuff, but we also have to adjust for time. We're reconciling everything to today, and if we're in a market that's going up like this, and we're clear, and we can prove it, and we can support it, then if we're using a sale that closed 2 months ago, under contract 3 months ago, we'll make a plus adjustment for the appreciation between the contract date and today. So we can do that. All right, let me give you another example. Time is speeding by way too fast for us. All right, so let's do the one I'm going to next. So this is a basement home, so I want to kind of give you kind of the basement. Let's see, let's see if that's right. All right, okay. So just give you a little bit on this. 1,600 square foot home. I know that includes a finished basement because again, was doing my research on this morning. So FQ Story, you guys see that? So FQ Story is south of McDowell, west of 7th Avenue, north and south of the freeway, I think. So I can't remember if this is north or south, but you guys picture that? So this is not a super easy appraisal. So the first thing I'm going to do is, like we talked about before, right? We're going to go all the under contracts. We're going to go back a year.
So you're using the closing date and not the under contract date?
For looking for comps, I'm using the closing date. And by the way, you can go over a year back on some unique circumstances. That's kind of advanced appraising, and we don't need to get into it today, but I was helping an appraiser with one this morning, townhouse subdivision off the point, over by the point, 16th Street in Glendale, and we used a comp July of 2022. We adjusted for time, but we included it because it's the second most recent sale in the subdivision. It's a unique 3-story subdivision, so we felt justified in doing it. So I can do it, but generally speaking, I don't, unless I'm in a really tough spot. So let's put in, I can't remember how this went this morning. Story, you guys following me okay? All right. And we kind of ran a little long on the sponsor, so we might run a few minutes late. I hope that's okay. And then I will stick around. I've got more examples, so I want you to be able to get on your way if you want to. Okay, so the second search is just FQ Story. I'm going to print that, and I'm going to make this a focal point of where I search, okay? Or where of comps I'm going to use. But that's not enough comps. If I had 50 comps in that search, then this would be super easy. So now again, it's drawing boundaries. And so this is tricky if you know this neighborhood. 15th Avenue is a bit of a price point, so I'm going to start with 15th Avenue over to 7th Avenue. I'm going to go down to Roosevelt and over and back to 15th Avenue, okay? Knowing that I could expand the search later, so now I'm going to take out FQ Story. I'm only obviously looking for single family homes, so I got 15. So I'm going to print those 15.
So you don't deal with age, you don't deal with all that at this point?
Yeah, so I just, again, if I got 80 comps in that search, I would start putting some other parameters, because 80 comps is too many for me. But in this case, I only had 15. I'm like, all right, I'll take all 15. So now, in this case, let's put in the square footage parameter next. Actually, so I'm not happy with only 15 sales, so I'm going to expand my search parameters. Again, so in this case, I'm going to go over to Grand, I'm going to go over to Central, down to McDowell. You guys been to the west side of Grand, you don't want to go there, so we're going to stop. We're going to stop with there, and let's see how many searches we get now. All right, 31. I like that number. That's a good number for me. So now I know.
Did you do plus or minus 10% for square footage?
I haven't done square footage yet because I haven't got a ton of sales. So now it's a little tricky because this neighborhood has a lot of guest houses and has a lot of basements, and so I want to be careful about my square footage parameters because I'm going to want basement comps in a minute. So in this case, I'm going to use a parameter that's pretty wide. Don't stress about it. We're going to get through this together. I'm going to go 2,000 square feet because I don't want over that. How many about 22? That's still good. I'm printing that search. Follow me? Mm-hmm. So now the next thing, the complex thing about this property is it has a basement, a finished basement. So now the next thing I'm going to do is go to basements, yes, and this is where the number is going to go way down. So now I got 6. And so now I have to decide, is that enough for me? In this case, because I have non-basement homes, that's probably going to be the end of my searches, okay?
And those are going to be the ones you use
well, so
for the various amenities and things.
Between all those searches, so in order of importance, I'm going to say the FQ Story comps are going to be the most important ones to me because location is really important. In this case, basement might be the second most criteria, and then I'll fill it out with anything else in that 33 search parameter. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure we're getting the hang of this. You follow that? And again, there's nothing hard and fast. Like, it would be really hard for me to explain to you why I'm staying only on the east side of Grand and why I'm doing all these things. Just, do you know the neighborhood?
Range. Look at that.
Huh?
It's a huge price range.
Oh yeah, I expected that. And again, so so we're aware, today, this afternoon, when I'm at this comp, if anyone wants to come visit me, I'll probably shoot pictures of like 12 comps.
Can we
Doesn't mean I'm
take
gonna
a
use.
field trip?
Yeah, it is vacant, you're welcome to go. You turned this into a 2-hour. Okay, so it's 1 o'clock, can I, go ahead.
Quick question, will banks only loan up to your number, or is there a percentage they'll?
The loan to, my number will become their number.
Oh.
They'll loan up to
That
it.
is-
But look, if you're buying it for 600 and I appraise it at 650, they'll take the lower of the two, I guess is the easiest way for me to explain it. All right, so you're getting the hang of it? Should I do one more and then we'll call it a day?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's see what I wrote down.
I have just a really quick question.
Yeah.
So I have one that's a Haver home that's been completely gutted and, completely, like pretty much taken down, so everything new, plumbing, electric.
Yep.
We're high, but we went into coming soon because it's such a desirable type
Hey,
of product.
people love their Haver homes,
Yes,
right?
so I don't think, I can't find a comp to justify our price.
Yeah. So you're searching in a different way than your appraiser's gonna search?
Do I go look at other Haver homes, even
Yes.
though like they're over, like mine's on 13th Avenue, right? Do I look in some of them that are over on 7th Street?
You
Those
can.
are different, and I
If-
adjust for that neighborhood being,
So the question is, if you have 20 Haver homes in your neighborhood, then no.
yeah, I don't have any.
If you don't have any, yeah,
I don't
Haver's
have any in the
important.
last 3 months.
Haver's important, so
Okay.
yeah, go do what
I
you
have
need
one
to
under
do.
contract.
You do? There you go, now you got a comp.
What's your price?
All right, so let's do one more together.
Top that.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Central Corridor. I pulled this one up, go ahead.
I just wondered if before we finish, you can spend a little bit of time, once you have that list, do you have a process of attacking that list that you can recommend?
Yeah, let me finish, let's talk about this when I'm done
Okay,
with this,
okay.
because I feel so bad that I'm keeping you like 2 hours over.
Oh, no.
Okay, so here's the last one we'll do today. So again, this is Central Corridor. We talked about that earlier. I picked this one out because it had a guest house and it's on a good sized lot. So let me do, so we only want single family homes. And I think this zip code's 85013. Let's see if I'm oh, I better put a close of escrow date in there, right? 09/06/20002. Let's see what we come up with. All right.
But you did
What am I doing?
2002.
Oh, well, this is a really hard one. I say this to my kids all the time. Don't ever correct me. That's what we're just kidding. You can correct me anytime you want. So many mistakes.
That's a lot.
All right. Okay. So now this is we're gonna do Central Corridor. So let's go northern to 7th Avenue. Let's go down to Missouri. There we go. So I'm going to take out the zip code, right? Because that's not giving me all those. So, and I didn't write down. Milton Groves. So let's do Milton Groves real quick. Okay. See if anything shows up. Those are small subdivisions sometimes over there. And it doesn't matter if I say Grove or Grove at all. Okay, so nothing in the subdivision. Let's say all right. So now, I don't have a subdivision search. I could do a book and map search, will get me a real narrow range, but instead for this, let's just start putting parameters. So I think this was a 3,000 square foot home with like a 600 square foot guest house. So I'm going to start like 2,400 square feet. And because I might be getting other guest house and basement comps, I'm going to go higher on the high side because I know you guys are going to add basements and guest house in there. So I'm going to go. The total square footage, including the guest house, was 3,600, so let's go 4,600. Again, I'm not sure I want to do this, so I'm going to still get a lot of properties, 82. I want to make sure I'm not getting new construction in this case, because every so often you see a new home, and I think this was built in the 60s, so let's go to 1979 or so, just narrowing the search, because again, now 80 comps is too many. So now we're down to 56. I might print this, okay? So I might use this. This is the search of my last resort. If I can't find anything better, I have this. So now, some important aspects of this house: exterior features, guest house. How many we got? 7. I'm going to print that list. So we got 7 comps there. So now I know that I'm armed when I go out to this property with some guest house comps. Because I don't want to submit my appraisal without any guest houses in my sales grid. So you follow that? So now I'm going to pull that back because I'm printing that. And now the lot size is a big deal in Central Quarter. You guys do any work out there? That's a big issue. So let's put in lot size, approximate lot square footage. And so I'm 36,000 square foot. Let's go 25,000 up to, not that you're going to see anything more than that. And what do we got? I took guest house out. How many did we end up with there?
7 o'clock.
7 again? Well, that's just coincidence, right? Okay. So those are my searches in this case. It's not as many as I would like. I could expand my square footage parameters a little bit, but I guess the point of what I'm trying to show you is the pattern that I have here, because I want you to get into the pattern. The pattern is subdivision's most important. Give me all the stuff in the subdivision first. The next search is draw your boundaries, and sometimes it's the 1 mile section. It's never the 1 mile radius. It's where do you think the buyer who is looking in your house, where else would they look? Okay? And for me, Central Corridor, it's a 2.5 mile area, so that's good enough for me. I'm staying in Central Corridor. And then what else is important about that house? If it were remodeled, that Ocotillo house I think was totally remodeled, I might do another search, just to give you an example. Let's go kitchen, partially or fully updated. I could put fully updated, then I maybe would take out the lot size parameters. And now I have a list. Remember, if we're totally remodeled, now I have a list of all the other houses in those parameters that have a totally remodeled kitchen. Okay? So just the process again is after you do the location and then the larger location with maybe a square footage parameter, what else is important? Basements are important. Guest houses are important. If it backs a busy street, you now want to go searching this area and say, okay, that looks like a pretty bad location. Maybe I'll use that. Or again, you might have to expand your searches because you want to find something else that has external obsolescence like you do. Okay?
Do you give any value to lack of supply? Like, for instance, if it's a 5 bedrooms, the only 5-bedroom home in Chandler in the Kyrene School District, so it's probably going to be a family that purchases the home since it's so large.
Yeah.
And it's the only one. Are you giving any value to that?
I have the ability as an appraiser to give value for that 5th bedroom if I think the typical buyer would pay more for the 5th bedroom, but I don't think that I would.
Okay,
I don't think that I would.
Because it's not necessarily the 5th bedroom, because there are some, there's just none that have sold in the last year.
Yeah.
And there's none on the market.
Well, so that's you'll probably end up talking about a time adjustment. Again, if there's a lack of supply, what does that usually mean for the market? It's moving upwards. And if the market's moving upwards because of the lack of supply, I would give you credit that way. In the date of sale section of the appraisal, I would make a positive adjustment to account for that lack of supply is driving up prices. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And our appraisers using the comfort report for any
Some
of
do.
that stuff?
I like Tina a lot. She's great.
Yeah.
You guys should love Tina.
Yes.
She does not give you bad news sometimes when I think she should. She gives you a really nice way to spin stuff, which is great for you. So you should thank her. Yeah.
When do you factor in the book and map? When do you do that?
So if I'm not in a subdivision, like another example I had was meets and bounds, meaning there was no subdivision, I might start with book and map. But I don't spend a lot of time, that just kind of puts it on the map for me. Because sometimes book and map still takes you kind of all over the place. But sometimes it just gives me usually a pretty concise location on the map, and then I can start drawing the boundaries.
And then one other question: when it comes to a house that's like a foreclosure, do you just let the appraiser know, hey, I included this one, letting you know that it's part of my comps, but this was a foreclosure, which is why I sold.
That's a great point. So don't just give me the comps that you love and you want me to use. Give me the comp next door that's a foreclosure that smells like smoke and has green carpet and all that stuff, because this is your chance to tell me what's wrong with it. Because what you guys don't know is slowly happening is there might be a point in the fairly near future where you can't appeal appraisals anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is really bad, which is why I want you to get it right on the front end. So you've done your job, you've given great information to your appraiser, because the guy who was in here at the beginning, anyone know Mike Broderick, MyHomeGroup? He would tell you a story about how Rocket Mortgage said, we don't allow appeals on this product. he couldn't appeal an appraisal. That was a bad appraisal that came in $4,000 low, and it was wrong. So again, it's about giving you the information so you're equipped on the front end. One more question, and then or two more. Actually, let me say this. If anybody needs to leave now, you're welcome to. The certificate's outside, but I'm going to answer questions, and if there's enough people staying around, I might do another example for you, but go ahead.
Can you compare a duplex with a single family with a casita?
Maybe. That's a hard one. It kind of depends. I've done it before. When I'm a house, if the house and the guest house are separately metered, meaning they're more conducive to having a tenant, I could potentially.
Because I'm looking for comp for this duplex. I went 3 miles and I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
And the only other thing is a house with a casita.
Yeah, you could potentially do that. That might be one where an appraisal is a good idea. By the way, while you're all still here, there is a course survey. You are going to be the first one to evaluate this course, and I already know that we only spent 20 minutes on a comp class talking about comps, but I'll take any other feedback you have. Okay? Yeah, go
The
ahead.
other thing about the dates, you started with the year, but you talked about last year. When do you get?
When I'm in the car, look, I want comps
Yeah.
for the whole year.
Okay.
When I'm sitting in my car after the inspection, first I'm looking at all my searches within the last 3 months. And if I've got great comps within the last 3 months, I don't go further back. But let's say I've got really good comps within the last 3 months, but the only guest house comp for that last one we did is 9 months old, I'll still use it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, because the location stuff or the date of sale stuff is so hard right now, I want to make that a big focus of mine. Yeah.
Which is the priority? You've said this before, and I always forget. Is it time or distance? You'll adjust for time before you adjust for distance.
Yeah,
is that correct?
I'm going to give you the super lame answer, both are really important. In the sense that I try and capture the best of both in my appraisals. I want the best stuff in my location, and I want the most recent stuff. And it's great when it's the same stuff, but it's usually not, and so it's kind of bifurcated. I might say, these are the best comps in my subdivision, and these are the best comps from in the last 3 months, and that's why I've got 8 on my grid. Does that make sense? So I give you both rather than say one's more important. Yeah.
So let's take that. It's now September. Last 2 months have been a little different, right? They've seen the downward trend, right? But we know we're generally speaking in an upwardly trending market in general, right? So you've got a particular subdivision and you can't find a comp to save your life. Except there's one that's 13 months old, you got it, and one that's 14 months old. But if you go out of that like and same subdivision, let's say it's a gated community, and you find another similar like and same gated community, but it's 1.5 miles away, and the product is super similar, and those comps are only 2 months old.
I'll do both. I'll do both. Like on the Haver example, like I'm going to take the best stuff in my location because I can adjust for Haver and I can adjust for time, and then because Haver is important, I'm going to go further away for that. So I'm
schizophrenic, and so am I.
Yeah.
Okay then.
Yeah, that's good. So again, that's why I don't give you 3 comp appraisals, because I'm going to give you both scenarios, and sometimes I might have 9 comps because I don't have any perfect ones. So I'm going to say, okay, here are the best guest house comps, or here are the best basement comps, and here are the best sales from the last 3 months, and here are the best sales in my subdivision. Okay? All right, so again, thank you for any feedback. I will stick around for any of you, but thank you for being on my maiden voyage. I've enjoyed this a great deal. So thanks a lot, everybody. Yeah, of course.
So I have a listing that backs up.
Hey guys, can I say something real quick?